everyone. Thank you so much for joining Dream Security Mentoring Network's webinar on Don't Ask That during residency interviews. I am Dr. Jessica Johnson. I am the founder and primary mentor for Dream Security Mentoring. And with us today, we have Dr. Ouabo, Brigitte Ouabo, and Dr. Roberta Dume. And we have a few students that are listening in. They're eager to take notes. I'm excited for that. But today's webinar is mainly so that we can give you guys some assistance during the residency interview process. Make sure that you feel comfortable and confident in the questions that you ask and the responses that you give. And also know what not to do when asking questions and responses that you give. And hopefully we're able to give you a sense of security and navigating the process. So that's my intro. I want to welcome our special guest. First, we have Dr. Brigitte Ouabo.
Yeah.
If you'll say hello, so the camera will pick you up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brigitte Ouabo. I'm happy to be here. Welcome.
Awesome. Well, and we also have, again, Dr. Roberta Dume.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, of course. So Dr. Ouabo is from Bafoussam, Cameroon. She's a practicing clinical pharmacist with Contra, Costa County Health Services at the Antioch Health Center in Antioch, California. She completed her undergraduate degree through California State University, and then she also received her MPA through a Master's in Public Health from Loma Linda University. Dr. Ouabo completed her PharmD in 2017 through Touro University, California College of Pharmacy, followed by her postgraduate year 1 pharmacy residency through Touro University and Gate Community Practice Residency. So we have plenty of qualifications to give you guys in regards to residency interviews. Next, Dr. Dume. She is originally from Chicago, Illinois. She's an assistant professor and clinical faculty member through the Department of Pharmacy Practice at Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science College of Pharmacy. Woo! All right. Which is located in North Chicago, Illinois. She has her clinical practice site at the Captain James A. Lovell Federal Healthcare Center. I'll refer to that as FHCC because I'll use it later in the podcast. But she's a board certified psychiatric clinical pharmacy specialist. She graduated with her undergraduate degree through Lake Forest College, and then she received her Doctor of Pharmacy degree through RFU. And she completed her first year ambulatory care focused training at the University of Minnesota College of Pharmacy. And then she specialized in psychiatric pharmacy by completing her PGY2 at FHCC. Yes, okay. And I am Dr. Johnson, Jessica. I'm from Anderson, South Carolina. I'm a board certified clinical pharmacy specialist in ambulatory care. I work at FHCC here in North Chicago, Illinois, and I received my undergraduate degree from the University of South Carolina, Columbia. I received my Doctor of Pharmacy degree from South University School of Pharmacy in Columbia, South Carolina as well. I did my PGY1 pharmacy practice residency at the Carl Vinson VA in Dublin, Georgia. And then I came to FHCC to complete PGY2, specializing in ambulatory care. Currently, I am the women's health pharmacist or women's health gynecology pharmacist for primary care. And I am also one of the pain management pharmacists within our facility. So we have some credentials for you guys. So we have plenty of experience to share with you and hopefully help get rid of some of those fears that you have. So why don't we just get started, and we'll start with the don'ts and things to avoid during your interview process, followed by some virtual interview etiquette and preparation, so that you guys are ready for those virtual interviews this year, which will be different from our experiences because I know everything that I did was in person. We'll then go into some of the do's and things that will allow you to stand out during your residency interview process. And then we'll open the floor up for any questions or and answer sessions for the students that are attending. So let's get on these don'ts. Does anyone have anything that they want to kind of say offhand, don't do this during residency interviews?
Don't chew gum, I guess, is just a quick and easy.
Yeah. Yes, especially during these virtual interviews where people can literally just focus right on you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're chomping on some gum like a cow, they will definitely kind of give you a little bit of that side eye. What about you, Dr. Ouabo?
I think the big don't is don't go to your interview unprepared. You really need to know about your site, where you're going, maybe the people you're going to be talking to, so that you have an idea of who they are, and that will definitely guide your questions and
Definitely.
your attitude. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do your research on the program. So ASHP has all of the information that is, what's provided by the program in their residency directory. So you're able to get an idea of what type of program it is, how many residents they accept, what the salaries are. All of the HR things as well should be located on the website, such as how many days you get for leave. And so don't ask those particular questions.
Right.
Salaries are not negotiable. Do not ask, residency is a pay cut, right, guys?
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
For sure. It's
So
definitely a pay cut. Yeah. And when you ask about questions like that, like benefits and pay time off, it shows that you're thinking about yourself. You decide that you want to do residency because you want to learn, you want to better yourself, and you want to better position yourself in the future for a career. So I think if you think about, don't ask questions about you. Ask questions that have to do with the site, with the experience you're going to have at the site. And that shows that you are interested in them, you're interested in learning, rather than being interested on what you are going to get out of it, what is going to benefit you. So if you think about it that way, about what can I do for this residency site, rather than what can they do for me, at least at the interview point, you will ask the right questions.
Definitely. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Dr. Dume?
I definitely agree with Dr. Ouabo. I think that researching the site and not asking cop-out questions like, what are your electives? Because those should be also available, especially for PGY1 general residency. The electives are pretty standard across the board, and most people's areas of interest, you can also identify if you, let's say, know you want to go into oncology, and you are looking ahead already as entering PGY1 resident, you'll find really quickly places that have a PGY2 in oncology. So you could be more than sure that they may have an elective option for you as an entering PGY1 resident, things like that. Definitely doing your research and knowing who your interviewers are will definitely maybe ask more meaningful questions, I think, for sure.
Definitely. So when you guys are saying knowing who your interviewers are you saying that they should Google their interviewers, find them on social media, or what kind of would you suggest for them to be able to get to know the people that are going to be interviewing them and what they should know about those potential interviewers?
If you're lucky enough to know who specifically is going to be interviewing you, I think professional sites like LinkedIn are a good place to start to get to know the person's interests, maybe their research interests. If it's someone that's interested in COVID vaccines, or who has done mRNA research in the past, someone's interested in specific areas in psychiatry, you could sometimes find that on LinkedIn, and knowing those persons' interest can guide your questions to that person. And people like to know that you've done your homework, that you're interested in what they're interested in, and that could make the interview go easier. Google is a good place to start also. Google has a lot of good information, general information on people. And but I've found out people have published on Google, and I've gone and read their abstract real quick just to get a sense of what that person is passionate about, and bringing that out or bringing that up in your interview in one way or another can be a plus for the interviewee.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Google's a great place to see if, for example, myself, I'm an assistant professor, and my faculty page may come up from the College of Pharmacy. So, you know, there may be some affiliated preceptors that you may have, and that may have other titles with an affiliated school or College of Pharmacy. So it's a great place, I think, to start too. Definitely staying away from social media. I hope that you can't find these people on social media. You know, I think we're going to talk about something similar later on. But yeah, I do not recommend social media. Definitely Google, LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, keep it on the professional end for sure. That's why I asked, because if you go on their social media, if you're able to find them, you know, we do have some people who may be older and have their full name as their, you know, social media name, and you're able to find them. And it might be a little weird if you're asking them about their kid or their dog that you saw on their profile. That's a little creepy. So that would definitely turn people off. Okay.
yeah.
But really finding out what the interests are for the preceptors within that program, and how those interests tie into what you want to pursue in your career. I definitely would recommend avoiding saying, you know, if you're interested in going into ambulatory care and you really hone in on someone who's doing, you know, ID, well, that's not really your interest, and that's not genuine to who you are. So remain genuine. But if you're interested in what they've done, or if you want to get information from them on their prior experiences, of course, ask those questions. Really, really great advice. How about questions regarding rotations? So most rotations are going to be provided to you. Information on those rotations will be provided through the residency manual when you are offered an interview. So you'll have everything that you need in regards to program description. But what questions would you guys recommend that students or residents ask in regards to rotations that are offered during those experiences?
You want to start, Dr. Dume?
I'm trying to think, and this is a good kind of tool to use is, you know, don't answer right away. Just like sit in the question for a minute. You don't have to have an answer. Some of the questions that maybe I would ask would be regarding the rotations. What are some new rotations that may be offered that aren't listed? Because rotations come, you know, will come in and out. Some, depending if you're pursuing maybe a more specialized PGY1, there may be preceptorship that may not be with a clinical pharmacist. You may also have a preceptor that could be a provider within a given specialty, like let's say women's health, or if in psychiatry, you may be rotating with residents who are non-pharmacy residents. So kind of like, you know, that role. There could be some, like maybe if they're not very explicitly written, which of these may be longitudinal versus which are there elective options that can be a little bit more longitudinal if you have, let's say, a passion for oncology. So you could have multiple opportunities to pursue that as a first-year resident. Those are some of the things that maybe I would ask, that you shown that you looked at what's available and that you want to learn a little bit more, because sometimes it's just a list and we don't really know anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think because on the website, the site will have the kinds of rotations that they have available. But you can ask more specific questions about the rotations depending on your personality and depending on what kind of experiences you're looking for, and depending on maybe what kind of job you want to have. you are dreaming of having in the future. So if, for example, you want to be an ICU pharmacist and you really like rounding with medical doctors and social workers, some sites like my site has been doing ICU rounds by remaining in the pharmacy and soaping the patients and then messaging a recommendation to the provider, whereas other sites go room to room with the team and they see the patients and they can see firsthand what's going on, and the offices, the laptops and computers are set right there on the floor. So if you prefer that kind of experience versus being in the clinical office and sending your recommendation, you can ask specific questions like, how do the rounds operate? Do I go on the floor or do I stay in the office? Just so you can kind of show to them that you're someone who likes direct interaction with the team and who likes direct interaction with the patient. In AmCare, some people do phone visits, other people do in-person visits. So you can ask questions like that to kind of gauge what kind of experience you're going to have, and also gauge the level of independence you'll need while you're on the rotation, while you're at the site. And if you're interested in some specific electives, you can kind of not ask what electives they have, but ask about what kind of independence you can have at that elective into molding the experience that you want for yourself. Or maybe how you can tie that into a particular, if you already have an idea of what you want to do for residency research, you can kind of ask questions that kind of wonder how you're going to tie your research with the elective rotation that you're going to have. So just thinking about who you are as a person, what kind of experiences you like, and how you can tie that personality of yours with the rotations. You can ask questions in that sense to kind of show who you are and show what your interests are right there at the interview, during the interview.
Yeah, that's really, really great advice. I definitely would recommend asking how you as a resident would be incorporated into the experience, using terminology such as interdisciplinary team, working with an interdisciplinary team. How is a resident incorporated into that team? Another thing that would be a really good question to ask, in particular from this past year, is how have residents' rotations been impacted by COVID-19? So how did the residents see kind of change in respect to the rotational experiences? How did they adapt to the rotational experiences to ensure that residents continue to have the same learning benefit while on rotation, but remaining safe, right? While on the learning rotation. So there's a lot, everybody was impacted by COVID. And so it would be interesting to see how they accommodated the learning experiences, and that those learning experiences didn't dwindle, I guess you could say, during that time. I think another thing too, that you guys could potentially ask is a big terminology or a big thing in pharmacy, right? When we're looking at residents, we want to know, are you one, teachable, and do you enjoy teaching as well? Because if we're taking on residents, we're most likely a learning facility. And so you'll incorporate other learners within other disciplines, but you will for sure incorporate students such as yourself. So what do you guys think would be a good question in regards to showing that you're interested in being kind of doing the layered learning model?
I think a really easy question, and sometimes it's a little bit hidden, is is there a teaching certificate program available with your facility? If it's associated with a college of pharmacy, to kind of have more kind of clinical teaching experiences, like day-to-day preceptorship of students. Or is there also opportunities for those who are interested in potentially pursuing academia to work didactically? I think now more than ever, being able to precept or lead a pharmacy skills kind of component in the school setting remotely with COVID, you're probably leaps and bounds ahead of even myself, because we're still learning. So with you coming in as a PGY1 resident and learning and being exposed to that type of a teaching experience, you had it a little bit as a student. Now you can have it maybe in the teaching role, and it's going to be an invaluable experience for when you pursue a job that you may want to have, maybe an adjunct faculty position, let's say. So I think that's definitely showing that you're interested in teaching by just asking that simple question of who is it associated with? How many students will it be able to precept? Is it one student that is with me throughout the whole year? Is it multiple students? Are the PGY1 residents really kind of like in charge of like organizing all of that? Those are, sometimes expectations. Sometimes it's a little bit not clear to you at the beginning. So I think it's a great question to ask during a residency interview.
Dr. Ouabo, did you have anything to add?
No, I think Dr. Dume hit it right on the nail. Asking about precepting opportunities, possible adjunct position, possibly being affiliated to other schools, other university where you could maybe teach, lecture, or tutor students. And I think a part of being a great teacher is how you evaluate your students or the people you're teaching. So knowing how a person evaluates you is how a person evaluates is a great sign of what kind of teacher they are. You don't want someone who only points at your faults. You want someone that can find your strengths and build and help you build onto those, and someone that can also help you improve your weaknesses. So possibly asking questions about your evaluation yourself as a resident. How do they what do they expect from you, and how do they evaluate that? And you can put it in a way where you want to just be prepared. You just want to learn. You just want to know how are the residents going to be evaluated, and because you want to be able to apply those principles as a teacher when you are, if you hopefully are in that position, should you match with them.
Oh yeah, that's really great advice, guys. Let's go to some don'ts. And I feel like a lot of times some of these don'ts sound like common sense, but some of these examples are, real life examples that, I've experienced as a preceptor interviewing residency candidates, that colleagues of mine have experienced or friends of mine have experienced. And I know just one off the top is you want to be personable, right? You want to show your personality, because that's what we're really looking at. Will our program match with your personality, your learning styles, and will you match with us in the same manner? Do you like us, right? We're interviewing you, you're interviewing us. But, maybe avoid things like, I'm moving here because my boyfriend's here, that's why I applied. Or what's another one? Did you guys have any examples? Like, there were some things that we were just like, oh okay, so no.
I've had one more for like entering pharmacy school and it's very similar kind of, approach. I've heard great things about Chicago. That's why I'm applying to your school. I'm like, well, we're not in Chicago. So we're in North Chicago, which is very different from Chicago. So yeah, it's like, location.
Location is definitely a good thing to look at. Don't ask about, unless someone, so like I have this picture behind me, right? If this was a picture of my cat or something, you don't have to comment on it. But if I'm having it in my background, maybe I want you to comment on it. Who knows? But try to avoid commenting on very personal things about people, like their hair or the picture of their kids, or what did you do last night? Don't ask those kind of questions. People have asked these. I know they sound like very common sense things to avoid, but asking things like, oh, how long have you been married? Or, oh, I love the ring on your finger. Who got you that? Please, y'all, it sounds very funny, right? But people will really, depending on personalities, people will really ask some of the strangest questions. So I want you to feel confident, and I want you to feel comfortable, but not so comfortable that you're, asking them what they're doing after work today. Don't do that.
One thing I would also say is that students want to break the ice, right? That's why they ask awkward questions like, what did you do last night? Or who got you that ring? But also try not to bring up controversial topics like the elections, maybe, or dispensing birth control. How do you feel about that? Don't ask questions that are gonna, because you don't know what Republican Party one is from, and you don't want them to have to um, bring that up in front of everybody if they didn't feel like it. So don't ask questions about controversial topics. And be confident, but don't be overconfident. Don't be cocky. Don't come across as I know everything. I'm confident in myself, and just be humble. Have an attitude of humility, of confidence, but yet be humble. One other thing I would say is it's obvious, but you have to dress professionally. Don't wear these earrings to an interview, right? You have to.
They're so cute, though.
You have to be. You have to let the attention be on your personality, on what's on your CV, on your dreams regarding the interview. So choose your colors appropriately, choose the length of your skirt appropriately. Um, just be professional. So don't overdo it. Just it's kind of hard, but just be just right with your personality, with your attitude, with your dress code, with the questions you ask. I know it's hard to say be yourself, but there's some sides of yourself that do not need to reflect to get you to do well on the interview.
Be your best self.
Be your best self. Yes.
Yes.
Very
I would also
nice.
add that don't have long-winded answers when you are asked situation-based questions. I cannot tell you how many times incoming residents, incoming people, prospective, clinical pharmacists for a job have answered long-winded questions, did not have their elevator speech ready to go, and 5 minutes later we're still answering that same question. My eyes have since glazed over, and I am checking my emails, especially in like this remote setting. I have like another monitor up. I'm probably doing something else and I've stopped listening to you. So definitely have a concise answer, but also have that answer be specific to a patient situation if it's a patient-based question or situation-based question. You don't want to say like, tell me about a time where, a patient was mad at you. And then you say, well, patients yell at me all the time when I'm staffing and, I was able to resolve their problems. It happens all the time. That wasn't very specific. And your interviewers are asking about a specific time that they can grab onto and remember you and be like, oh yes, that was a student that had to deal with a naloxone patient, et cetera, et cetera. So it's be specific, but don't be long-winded. It's kind of like a Goldilocks situation. Like you were saying, Dr. Ouabo, it's like you have to be able to kind of like gauge your audience. You'll see when your interviewers are probably stopped listening to you and it's time to wrap up. I can't tell you how many times that has happened to me. And I tried, and I'm a very good listener, I will say that, but sometimes it's too much.
Yes. Oh, that's great advice. So that'll lead me kind of into our next topic. Both of you guys gave information that kind of leads into our next topic. Is one, preparation for virtual interviews. I know that all of our interviews for our facility is going to be virtual, but I also want to talk about responding to questions, being overly nice, things of that nature. So, kind of to keep it short and sweet, because we're about 30 minutes in. Don't be extra syrupy. That's kind of my term. I tell a lot of my residents, don't be extra syrupy. Show your personality. If you like someone's, earrings, like I like Dr. Ouabo's earrings, like, oh, those are really nice earrings, and then keep it at that. Or, oh, you guys ask such great questions. I'm so enthused about coming to your program, and I love this and that about your program. Relax. Just relax. press the break. You will show your personality through your conversation. Okay. You don't have to, butter anybody up. You got the interview. Your resume, your CV, your application, that got you the interview. You've already buttered us up. Okay. Your letter of intent, I'm pretty sure, I know when I read letters of intent, I'm like, ooh, is it so beautiful? We need to invite that to an interview. Okay. But I'm also a little extra. So I love good letters of intent. Okay. Tell me about you, girl or guy, whatever. All right. So next, I do want to talk about, the long-winded answers, right? So ASHP has some really, really great information on the website in regards to preparing for interviews, answering questions, potential questions that you may be asked. And, with some of my mentees, I'll be doing mock interviews to prepare for residency interviews. And I will definitely be pulling questions from these along with other questions that we utilize in practice. But one thing that ASHP mentioned, which I didn't know was a term for, but it's the STAR method. Okay. So if you're asked a question, like Dr. Dume was saying, tell me about a difficult situation that you had with a patient, or tell me about a time you had to resolve a group project and how did that go, or whatever the situational case may be, so that we're able to understand how your thinking process and how you resolve conflict and all of that good stuff. It's called the STAR method. I'm going to make sure I get everyone's emails after this, and I will send you all of this in a packet, okay? But the STAR method essentially is you give us information about the situation. So S, you give background, you provide context. Don't say, yes, I get conflict issues all the time and everybody at the pharmacy hates me and my preceptors all said I'm horrible. You probably didn't get an interview if that was the case. So you give the situation, you give the background information and context to that situation, being brief, concise, and detailed. And then you describe the task. What was that challenge? What was the expectation? And then you go into the action. So that's when you elaborate on the things that you did to resolve that situation. And then what were the results? Okay. So what you put into place, what was the result of that? And whether it was a bad result or a good result, it's still a result, right? So if it was a great result, you could talk about what you learned from that situation and how you handled it. If it was a bad result, you could talk about what you learned from that situation and how you would handle it differently moving forward. So STAR, everybody got that? Situation, task, action, result. ASHP is on it, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of at work when we do, because sometimes I do medication error reviews and we do SBAR. Have you guys heard of SBAR? Yep. What was the situation, the background, the assessment of the problem, and the recommendation? And it's kind of the same thing. So the situation is what happened with that patient. The background is it was a little busy. It was late at night. The assessment is I apologized. I gave her an item for free, and the recommendation is schedule more staff, discuss with the supervisor, and figure out how not to make this happen again, or whatever. So if you can do either STAR or background in 4 sentences, you can answer the question right away. Sweet and short. Yeah.
Yes, I harp on being detailed but concise in clinic. We don't need all these words, guys, okay? And then, the information I'm going to send you, I want you to think about some topics, think about some situations that you will want to answer when you have these situational questions come about, and go ahead and write the ST or SBAR down and practice it. So you're already prepared to, when you get that question, because you will get a situational question, you already have the situation in mind, you already have how you're going to detail it, and you already have the results and what your actions were, and you're ready. And everyone's going to be like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. That was amazing. That's probably going to be me, but
she's extra.
I am. I was like, oh my God, that's such a great question. You answered it so well.
Being an eloquent speaker is hard, especially during an interview when nerves are high, I think, and you want to ramble because you want to keep talking and talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, the awkward silence, allow there to be awkward silence. So if someone asks you a question, and Dr. Dume said this earlier, sit on it if you need to, think about your response. You don't have to come off quick, especially if it's like a clinical question and you're really wanting to think through the process of how to respond, because you most likely will get a clinical question during your interview. I'm not sure, and you guys can let me know, but I'm not sure how many people will be doing presentations during their interviews. PGY1, PGY2, there's usually some type of presentation, but that may have changed this year. I don't believe we are, but you will get clinical questions in order for us to gauge your foundational knowledge. You guys have anything to add to that? No? Okay. I can see what they're doing. All right. Yeah, that awkward silence is rough. But go ahead and say, like, that is a great question. Can I think about that for a moment? And of course, we'll say yes. But just remember that we are looking at you because we have nothing else to look at but you. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll have to remember that too. So in regards to that, let's get to the virtual interview preparation. So we're all here virtually. Let me swipe over, see who else is here. Turn your camera on, girl. I can't see you. She's like, I don't know you. But so, and Dasha's at work. So you all know how to use Zoom, clearly. We are on a Zoom call now. If there is another platform that's going to be utilized during your interview, ask what platform is going to be utilized during your interview. You get your interview, you schedule the date, ask the questions that you need to know the answers to. So how long potentially will the interview last? What platform will the interview be on? Will there be a presentation? Whatever the case may be. And then practice those interviews on that platform if you're able to. If not, utilize what you have. Zoom, FaceTime, Google group chat, Instagram. There's plenty of video platforms that you can practice your interview on. You want to make sure that you are dressed the part, okay? I usually have on sweatpants when I am working from home.
Don't do that.
In case you have to stand up, you want to make sure you are dressed like you are going on an interview. Roberta's like, they can't see you, but she's like, you can't see me, but I have on sweat. You also want to make sure you have good lighting, okay? So sit in front of a window. I have a ring light here. If that's not something you have, sit in front of a window if it's during the daytime. If not, you want to have a lamp that's in front of you, not above you, because then it looks weird. You have like this weird shadow coming down, not below you, because it looks like you're, in a scary movie and you're going to kill somebody. So you want to make sure the light is more so directing toward your face, okay? Make sure there's no loud noises behind you. So if you live in a pretty busy area, or, if you have family, or whatever the case may be, if it's family, let them know. Don't come up in here today. I am interviewing.
Yes.
Or if you can go to a place where there's quiet, like on rotation. If you're on rotation, you can sit in an office. Do that. What else do you guys have in regards to the interview process from what you can see, what we were looking at?
If you're on a laptop, don't have your laptop in your lap and like constantly be like moving. That's happened to me before, where somebody was like sitting on a couch and they kept moving around and fidgeting and the whole camera kept moving. So make sure it's on a table, or mine's on a laptop stand, so it can be raised a little bit so the camera angle is not coming up from my nose, so it's more at eye level. I think is something that sometimes we forget, because we're all like on our laptops, on our laps, very casual, we're at home. If you're not on a desktop computer, let's say, something that's like sounds so intuitive, but then you don't realize you're doing it until the person on the receiving end is getting a lot of this.
Yeah. Make sure your device is charged, preferably a laptop, so you don't run out of battery in the middle of the interview and scramble to get it charged. Your internet connection also, make sure it's good. Um, and be in a mindset interview. I know because it's virtually, you might tend to be too casual. So dress the part, just like you're going for an interview. You may even want to stand instead of sitting in your chair, because when you stand, your posture and your confidence kind of stands out better, and your voice projects out better. Um, so just act as if you were at an actual interview site. Forget your home or and be in and mind the lighting, like Dr. Jessica said. Use a device that's not going to be moving too much. Like Dr. Dume said, make sure your device is charged. Make sure your internet connection is good, and dress the part. I would stand just because that's when I want to be. When I want my voice to project out more strongly, I stand. Even when I used to do phone interviews, I would stand. um, so and just be confident. You'll do great. Remember that they want you. They always say they want you just as much as you want them. They want a good candidate just as much as you want a good residency experience. So
Yes.
be confident. Just know that you've done the work for the past 4 years. You know what you are looking for. If you've been invited, it means that they know you have what they're looking for. At this point, they just want to make sure that your personality matches their vision, their values, and their site. So just be confident and have all the technology um, available and reliable.
Yes, definitely. Great advice, guys. I think a last few things I would say is mind your background. If you have headphones, you if you have headphones, mind your background. Great timing. Okay.
You'll have to lock your cats in for the interview.
Yes. Okay. I did that on purpose. Um, you want to be about an arm's length away from the camera if possible. You don't want to be all up in here like this, and you don't want to
Yeah.
be too far back so people can't see you. If you can sit where there's some stuff around you so that it's avoiding some type of echo. But again, your headphones will definitely help with that. You don't want to have like Beats by Dre on your head, but you do want to have, something a little more incognito so you can't see it. And you also want to make sure you're looking at the camera when you are interviewing. Because if you're looking like this, if you're I'm sorry, I raised them better. If you're looking like this, I'm looking at you guys, but it looks like I'm just looking off randomly, right? So look at the camera. It's awkward. That's why you need to practice. And then if you're going to have paperwork with you or whatever the case may be, you don't want to be able to be seen going like this and going like that. If you can have it as close to the camera as possible so that when you look down or you look away, it's right there and it's not very noticeable. So I mean, our time frame is short. I definitely want to be able to help you guys, but I want to open the floor for any questions that the students have. So if you have questions, just unmute your mic or you can raise your hand. And we'll definitely answer any questions that you have here and that we have in the last 15 minutes here.
Right now, my battery is dying.
See? Charge it. Go ahead, Andrea.
I had 2 questions. It was just to figure out if these questions are inappropriate to ask. So I was wanting to know when you were talking about teaching experience. So most of the ones that I saw, they usually say if they have the certificate or not on the certification. But then I was wondering if it would be appropriate in the interview to ask what type of topics the resident is supposed to be or expected to teach. Like, is it more clinical based, or is it certain, I guess, modules that we'd be able to teach, or is that too forward in asking a question like that?
I don't think it's inappropriate. What about you, Dr. Jessica? Dr. Ouabo?
No,
I think
it's
okay.
very appropriate.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr.
I
Ouabo.
think it's appropriate because it kind of tells them also what you're already thinking ahead. You're already trying to figure out. They're gonna start thinking, oh, maybe she has certain topics in her mind already that she's interested in learning and teaching others. So I think it's definitely appropriate to ask about what topics you could possibly teach in that class. It shows you're thinking ahead.
Yeah. And is it more formal, like in the classroom setting? Is it informal and, or in the topic discussion style format?
Good point.
Yeah.
With COVID, how is this going to happen?
Yeah, definitely. I think appropriate. And it shows that you're interested in teaching if that's really what your passion is and you wanted to know more information. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah,
definitely. And it's all in how you word the question as well. And you can say I'm interested in teaching these particular topics. What are the opportunities to do that? So yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you. And then my second question was when you were saying like what things, like it was part of the avoids, like the don'ts. I was wondering if like it would be appropriate to ask, I guess whoever is at the interview, like what, or maybe that's like a resident question. I don't know if residents are at the interview, but just like what they would do outside of just, I guess, work, but especially if they haven't been to that city. But then again, it's just like, it kind of sounded like that might be inappropriate. So I was trying to gauge what you guys were saying and what was appropriate to ask.
So it sounds like you're trying to figure out what the work-life balance is for residents. You can literally say, I think you should have an opportunity to speak with the residents themselves. Usually the way the interview is set up is you'll meet with the residency director, you'll have preceptors that will interview you and ask you some of those like situational based questions and a clinical based question. You'll have time with the residents to talk about what their experiences are currently, what they're doing moving forward. I definitely would want to know, like, what are you guys doing next? And then also asking that work-life balance is a great question to ask the residents because you want to know if the culture within the facility, is it all work, there is no work-life balance. You're not asking, do y'all go out every Friday or anything like that, but you do want to know, like, what is the cohesiveness within the residency? What's the relationship between the residents and the preceptors? What's the learning experience like from the residents' perspective? You want to know, are you seen as a learner or are you seen as a worker? So those are kind of the questions that you can definitely ask the residents, but not your preceptors.
Yeah.
But yeah, good question.
Definitely think that it's also appropriate if it's a city you've never been to and you're doing a virtual kind of tour or like a virtual interview. It's okay to ask like, okay, Miami, you're applying to Miami. What are some things you like to do on the weekends in Miami? Is it like everyone goes to the beach or are there other things to do? I think that's appropriate to ask the residents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We get that a lot at our facility. What do you guys do during the winter in Chicago? Lots of things pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, plenty.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, we look at the snow outside. Any other questions from you guys? Did you have any other concerns, doubts, fears? No? Okay. I can't see. All right, nobody's putting in. Oh. Hi, how are you? It's Amma, right?
Yes,
I'm calling
hi.
you out. Hi. Did you have any questions for us?
Not necessarily, but I wanted to ask, I know at the end of interviews, they ask you, what questions do you have for us? Is it always necessary to have a question for them? Or at this point, are you supposed to have a good idea of the program? So if you don't have any questions, is that okay? Or would that be seen as like a red flag?
I don't think it would be seen as a red flag. That's a great question. I think what you could do is write down some of the things that people state when they're asking you questions or when they're explaining something, so that you can go back and be like, oh, well, earlier you mentioned this. Can you elaborate a little more on that? Or earlier you mentioned that residents do this. How would that change for this, or how would that go for that? You don't have to have, a phenomenal question or anything of that nature. But if you are looking to show that you were listening and paying attention to what the preceptors were saying, of course, ask whatever that may be. But if you don't have any questions, then you can, of course, say, you guys explained everything really, really well. I don't have any other questions for you, but I thank you for your time.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of move from that. What about you? You're saying, Dr. Dume.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with everything you said, Dr. Johnson. I also just wanted to add, I forgot to mention this earlier, is answer the question and make sure that you're not going off on some tangent. It goes back to being long-winded. I've found this in the past where we ask a question and the candidate or the interviewee doesn't really answer our question at all. They kind of just go off. So it goes back to active listening, making sure that you understand the question that you're being asked, because sometimes they're multi-layered and can have multiple sub-questions within. So asking for the question once more time to be repeated is totally fine. And making sure you're actually answering the question, because you'll be surprised that it happens a lot where candidates don't answer the question that we ask, but something else.
And then ask, did I answer did I answer your question? You can ask. If you ask a question, you feel like you didn't answer it, ask, did I answer your question? So yeah, that's a really great point. Dr. Ouabo, did you have anything to add in regards to asking questions towards the end?
Mm-hmm. I think it's good to have a question, but don't just ask a question for the sake of asking a question. Because if you ask a question that is evidently asked, they can tell if you're asking a question just for the sake of asking a question. I wouldn't just say, no, thank you, I don't have a question. I would, if you don't have a question, like Dr. Johnson said, thank them for the opportunity to interview, explain that they've covered everything you had in mind, and just say something appreciative, something positive, rather than just saying, no, thank you, I don't have a question. But it's good to have a question. You almost always have something to ask, especially with the pandemic. Things have changed so much. You can just, if they don't cover, you can ask about how do they think the upcoming residence experience is going to be different with the pandemic. That's just something that I know, because everyone has gone through so much change in processes and how they do things. So that is a good question to ask. It's a general question and it's relevant to pretty much every site. So it's good to have a question, but if you don't, just have an open-ended ending.
And then too, and speaking of ending the interview, so we can wrap up towards what to do at the end. I know there's usually a question about, do I send a thank you letter? Do I send an email? What do I do when I leave? I would thank them, and I honestly would go ahead and send a thank you letter, because say there's a question that you were asked, and a lot of times as students you're told to say, oh, that's a great question, I'll get back to you. Well, it's a residency interview, so you may not get back to them, and that can seem like a cop-out type of response. So thank them, send thank mail, maybe once you kind of calm down after the interview, and write down the things that people said to you, especially the residency director, and thank them for that particular conversation, or if they answered a specific question that you had, thank them, be very detailed about what that was. And then if there's something that you didn't answer during the interview, or that you had a question about that developed when you left, ask that question then. And then another thing I would do outside of the thank you email is write down everything that you were asked, okay? And then how you responded to that. As soon as you log off, write down what you were asked and how you responded to that question. Because most likely those questions are going to be asked at another interview. And if you didn't like how you responded, or you feel like you could have done better, or it was an off the wall kind of question and you had no idea, you now have, a leg up, so you know how to respond when it comes back. I hope does that make sense to you guys? There's Alma.
Great suggestion.
All right, so people have to go back to work. So did anyone else have any questions?
I just have a comment. I just want to tell Andrea and Anna that, and Dasha, everybody has their story, everybody has their dream, everybody has experiences. And we are just going over general things. There's more specifics to you. So I'm available. I'm sure Dr. Dume and Dr. Johnson are available. You can email us one-to-one. You can email us your CVs because you were here today. We can go over specific questions that you have that you couldn't ask here, or we can go over answers that you have. I know I'm available to do that. If you have answers prepared for all those top general questions, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Some questions are going to be asked, so we can help you just to make sure that at least those questions are up to par. So feel free to email me or contact me directly, and I'm willing to kind of work with you on a one-on-one basis if you need just to work on whatever you have available to prepare for the interviews.
That's so perfect. I'm going to wrap with that, but Dr. Dume, did you have any other questions, concerns, words of advice, wisdom, anything?
Don't forget to smile. I think it's especially during video interviews and phone interviews. We like to see you smiling, and if you smile, I always try to smile, and I don't think people are looking at me when they're doing these interviews, but I'm smiling at you, and hopefully you smile back because I like to see your beautiful faces. So
yes.
Oh yes, I love it. Yes. Dr. Ouabo, that's perfect. If you guys have questions, I will be offering mock interviews. My mentees don't know this, but we are setting those up once they start getting interviews. But if you guys who are listening want to establish a mock interview setup, we can definitely do that. Your CVs and everything, of course, you want to make sure that you are aware of your CV. Your CV is up to date once you are going into your interview process so that you're able to speak on potential API rotations that you had that weren't completed by the time you submitted your application. Your letter of intent, know what you wrote, because people will ask you about your letter of intent. So we can definitely do a very in-depth mock interview where we record the interview, we go over the things that you did great, opportunities for improvement, how you felt. We want to make sure that you're comfortable going through the process. So we're definitely here. You can email secure.dream@gmail.com. I can get you in contact with Dr. Ouabo if you don't have her information, but please email me, send me your email address, because I want to send you all the packet that ASHP provides. I already have it ready for you. And I'll also include the guest speakers information today. So if you guys have questions, they're shaking their head. Yes, they are open to answering those questions for you. And yeah, so guys, thank you for joining us today. Dr. Ouabo, Dr. Dume, Dr. Jessica, the students, thank you so much for taking the time out of your weekend to join us. We really hope this was beneficial for you. Again, if you have questions, you know how to contact me because you're here. And I would love to help you guys prepare for interviews. And you already have mentors here as well who are ready to help. So thanks, guys.